Hi, friends. Welcome again to another episode of Beyond the Clouds Edge to Edge Transformation. And speaking of transformation, pretty much everything is turning around us: education, health, journalism. And I have with us today Esther Wojcicki. Esther has been a big reformer in the education movement. And so also she talks on many other topics such as parenting and journalism. Esther, welcome to Beyond the Clouds. Tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you end up becoming the star teacher, and how did you end up talking about parenting?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me and having me here. I'm pretty excited to be here. So how I ended up being the star teacher and in journalism and actually living in Palo Alto, it was all coincidental. It was an accident. So, I moved to Palo Alto from Berkeley, where I went to school. And when I moved to Stanford, that was in the 1960s, when most of you were probably still in diapers. But at that time in 1960 in Palo Alto, 1965, 1970, it was really sleepy here. The most exciting thing that they had here were the cows on the pasture. And I'll tell you, that was it, really. The cows would be, you'd walk around and you'd see cows. So Stanford was called the farm. So it's been a big change since 1960s to 2020, 23. It's a really big change. Then the other thing that was kind of coincidental is how I ended up teaching and teaching journalism. So I started out as a journalist. I have a master's in journalism from UC Berkeley. And I started out in the 1970s in journalism. And for those of you that remember, or maybe those of you that didn't even know, women could not enter into the journalism field. It was an all-man profession. And so it was kind of irritating for me that I was not able to do news stories or opinion stories or news, anything that was interesting. I was kind of relegated to the women's page. For those of you that don't know, the newspapers used to have 4 sections: news, opinion, sports, and women. And the women's section dealt with parenting, diapers, cooking equipment or cooking or how to cook, and Dear Anne or Dear Ann Landers or Dear Abby. That was what was in the women's section. And all the news stories were about like new detergent or new pots, something like that. I didn't like it. So I decided instead, since I couldn't really break into this easily, I would teach journalism. Why not? It sounded really exciting to me. So that's how I ended up teaching journalism. I started in 1984 at Palo Alto High School with a very small program that had about 20 students in it. And I taught them all how to think. And I gave them an opportunity to be in charge and sort of to control their stories and what they were writing about. And this was sort of unheard of in those days. People did not give students an opportunity to be independent. They didn't give students an opportunity to collaborate. In the 1980s, collaboration at that point was still considered cheating. Students were supposed to do all the work themselves. Don't ask your mom, your dad, or your friends. No one can help you. You get help, you're cheating. So I was kind of going against the system, but I realized how well it worked. When I had kids working together in groups, boy, they were really excited about it. They loved working together. And so I revolutionized the program after I started in 1984. By 1986, it was already a student-directed program. It gradually grew into more student direction, actually. By the year 1990, I already had about 50 kids in the program. Started with the original 20. And it continued to grow all through the 90s. And it was seen as a beacon, a new way of teaching kids to think, and a new way of teaching journalism, putting kids in control. So by the year 2000, there were about 100 kids in the program. And it got to be a little too much for me, 100 kids and one teacher. So fortunately, the school district allowed us to hire a new teacher, a second teacher. And that was after the kids started a magazine called Verde. And they ran 4 issues that year. And then they submitted it to Columbia University for evaluation. And it won first place in the nation. So that helped the school board decide that they really should hire another teacher. It was very effective. So I have to thank Columbia for running those competitions. It's really great. And so the program continued to grow all through the early 2000s, and actually all through the teens as well. And today in 2023, there's one newspaper, there are 12 magazines, podcasting, television, radio, and movie making, in addition to the newspaper. So it grew quite a bit. And today we have between 700 and 800 kids enrolled in this program. It's the largest in the United States. Called the Media Arts Program at Palo Alto High School. And thanks to the citizens of Palo Alto, they voted to support a bond to improve the schools. And in that bond, they built the Media Arts Center, which is a huge 25,000 square foot building that houses the journalism program. So we're very grateful. It's a very supportive community. And the businesses are also very supportive of the kids. It's a great community, which is why lots of people want to live here.
It's almost like a college of journalism, the way things must be at this time.
It is like a college of journalism. Actually, we teach more than many colleges teach in journalism. And some of my students have gone directly into journalism from the program. They went to college, and I suggested they major in something they're interested in: political science, history, English, computer science, whatever they want. And then they already have the journalism skills, so they don't need to take a course in journalism.
One of your interesting talks was you believe that students should be the CEO of their own education, their learning, their life. Can you elaborate on that? I know in the 80s that was a foreign idea, but I think more and more people believe in that idea. But how would it change the way you would educate today?
Yes, I believe that the kids should be the CEO of their own education. And this, okay, maybe doesn't start in kindergarten, but it can start in upper elementary school. So kids need to be able to take courses that they're interested in. And within those courses, they need to be given more control of whatever it is they're learning. And that's what it sounds kind of strange. But in fact, they need to be given these opportunities. Now, I'm not talking about all the time, because I do think direct instruction also is important, but there has to be some time. And what I'm suggesting now is 20% time, just 20% of the typical school week or school day, depending on this district, where the kids get to decide what they are interested in and work together in teams and work on that project. And that's sort of like the journalism program that I have. But some schools might not have a journalism program, but still want to empower their kids, so they could give them 20% of the time to work on projects they think are interesting. It could be like robotics. There's so many different things out there. It could be on climate issues or on plant issues or on so many things facing the world today. And those kids, they're smarter than you think. And they can come up with very creative solutions. So that is one of the things that I would like to see the school district adopt, school districts all over the country. And they can do 1 day a week, which could be Friday a week. That would be 20% of the time. Or they can do, 1 hour a day. I think it just depends on how the school is set up. But you have to ask, how do kids learn to think independently, be creative, work in teams when they don't have any experience doing it in school? Like, where's the creativity when the majority of the school day is focused on memorizing, right? You memorize and then you take a test. And then studies show that 20% of it is lost within the first 2 days. And by the time the week goes by, most of the kids don't remember 50% of what they memorized. So how does that help you be a critical thinker? How does that help you be creative? How does that help you, speak out, have good speaking skills, writing skills? I'm not sure it helps you do any of those. So that's why I am thinking about 20% time and promoting 20% time.
The 20% number, the last time I heard it was at Google. And look at how the company has grown from
That's
giving
right.
that 20% autonomy to do a variety of things. And it's no longer just a search company or just a YouTube company. There's so many things. So it seems to work everywhere, the 80-20 rule.
That's right. It works. It worked at Google. I mean, we can be thankful for the 80-20 rule because Google Gmail is a 20% project. And
Yes.
so thank you, whoever did that, because I use Gmail all the time.
Yeah, me too. Me too. You said something very interesting. Our children are much smarter than we think. And I've had the same experience with my children who are in their late 20s. I've learned to grow with them. And you have three smart young women, a little more mature. And did you grow up with them? How did life change for you as you're parenting and later at some point you kind of grow along with them?
I think I grew along with them. But from the very beginning, my theory with them when they were infants was that I was going to teach them to be as independent as I could, independent thinkers. And, little kids, they might have wacky ideas, but they've got ideas. And pretty soon, they learn faster than you do, actually. And you see the accelerated rate at which they learn because at 1 year old, most of them can't talk. And at 2 years, they can talk. And actually, if you expose them to 2 languages or 3 languages, they can learn all those languages too. But if I try to do that at my age, or if you try to do it at your age, I can tell you, you'd be sweating like mad with the book, trying to memorize it. It would take you forever to do it. But little kids, they learn it really quickly. They learn how to ski quickly, how to swim, how to ride a bike. If you try to learn to ski when you're 25, that's already young, right? But you do much better if you learn to ski when you're 12 or even 5.
The education system, as is in the United States and in most countries, is not working because it's based on a very old model, rote education. And we have today among us ChatGPT, Google Bard, so many platforms. Probably memory is the least important thing today. How should education shift, in your opinion?
Memory is the least important. I mean, it's not like you don't want to teach kids to memorize at all, but that should not be the focus. So what education should do today? We all know about ChatGPT and the large language models and all this. So instead of running away from it and blocking it and banning it, we should teach kids how to work with it. It kind of reminds me of what happened in the 1980s when calculators came out. Schools banned calculators. Like, if you came to school with a calculator, you were sent to the office. It's ridiculous. And what calculators do or have continue to do, how to add, subtract, multiply, divide. They just do it faster for you. And so ChatGPT can also help you do things that you already know how to do faster. Also, it can be a tutor for kids. There's so many things it can do to help. So, for example, I used to teach Romeo and Juliet. Okay. I don't know if you've read Romeo and Juliet. Okay,
Yes.
good. All right. If you read it in the original English, it's very hard to understand. I mean, it's like almost impossible. So I, as the teacher, was always, we'd read it in class and then I would interpret it. And then we'd read some more and I would interpret it. So now I don't need to do that anymore. ChatGPT can do that for me. You can just say, please translate act one, scene one into ordinary American English, and it will do it for you in what, 30 seconds? So, I mean, ChatGPT can work as a tutor in so many ways. It can, like, if you want it to show you how to write the introduction to an essay, it can show you how to do that as well. I think teachers should stop being so afraid because, in fact, we can find out if the whole essay has been written by ChatGPT. There's all these ways, these apps that have been created to detect it. So kids know about it. We all know about it. And so I think that they should say, give kids an opportunity to use it and to understand how it works, and then to write it themselves. They'll want to do that. No one wants to do it. No one wants to have somebody do it for them all the time. Just like little kids, they don't want you to do stuff for them, you know? So just imagine, a 2-year-old putting on a shoe. I don't know if you have a 2-year-old, but they're like, no, I want to do it, me do it, type of thing. They want to put on their own clothes. They want to put on it. They want to do everything themselves. They don't want you to help them. That idea continues through school if you give it the opportunity to blossom. Kids want to learn how to do things. They don't want you doing it for them. They're not going to want ChatGPT doing it for them all the time. They'll want to know how to do it. And as long as they know that there's a ChatGPT detector that will give away the fact that they overused it, they will not use it.
My children went to school in the 90s, and even at that time, the way boys and girls were treated in school was different. My daughter was always number one in math. And we remember they had these special programs for gifted and talented students in California.
Yes, they did.
And once my daughter's teacher said, "Hey, boys, you're supposed to be smarter at math. What happened?" And then I told the teacher, "Please don't say that. There's no such rule that the male brain is smarter in anything." Have you seen a change in the way people are approaching education of women? Have there been, at least hopefully, there's a paradigm shift in the way girls are seen in school now?
I think there is a paradigm shift. They would never say that today in school. They would never say to a girl, you don't belong in this class because you're a girl. It's a math class. So there's a lot of opportunity for girls to excel in math and in physics and in all the sciences, and also in computers as well. And I'm happy to see that. This Barbie movie was not my favorite movie in many ways, but one thing that was good about it is it shows that girls can do anything that they set their mind to do. And earlier this year, Mattel created a doll, a Barbie doll in the name of each of my daughters. So, Susan, Janet, and Anne. Susan was as the head of YouTube. Janet is a professor of pediatrics, and Anne is the founder of 23andMe, and they all have their own Barbie dolls. And so it shows respect and appreciation and admiration for girls that are succeeding in all sorts of scientific areas or areas where girls normally were not welcome. So yes, I think it's great. Your daughter won't have to worry about that anymore.
No. And she's a firm advocate of fairness, and she works in public interest. So yes, I completely agree with you. You have three daughters who worked in three different scientific disciplines, if you will. How would you say a parent can contribute to their children's success? Uh, I never believed in rote education. So often I used to just play with them and take them to the museums. But that's not considered the best way to get the best grades. What's the best way a parent can be there supportive when a child is learning and wanting to learn?
I think what you want to do is encourage their interest in whatever it is they're interested in. And, the more autonomous they feel, the more empowered they feel, the better it is for them growing up. You want your child to feel like they're good at whatever they try, even if they make big mistakes when they first do it. The idea is to tell them no one does it perfectly to begin with. Everyone has to revise. And I used to give examples in my class about writing, because they would write an essay and then it wasn't very good. And so then I never gave them a grade. I just said, we need to revise this, and then I would show them how. But then the example I gave is I was a writer for Time magazine. And so I can just tell you, and I used to tell them all the time, that I would have to write like 20 different versions of what I was writing, because it would always be edited. So even a professional writer does not do it right the first time. And okay, there are some kids that do it perfectly right away. That's kind of rare, especially and then in math and science, you have to get the right answer. But if you practice sufficiently, or if you understand the process, you will be able to do it. And if you don't get an A, don't worry. Some of the smartest kids that I know, and the ones that have done the best, are kids that did not get an A the first time. So all parents need to remember that, and all kids can relax. And my daughters, not one of them had a 4.0. So there, just to give you an idea.
So
It
it's
was
not
0.8, 3.6, 3 points. I don't remember exactly, but it was not, they got a B in something.
with all the technology that we have today. Um, I think, wouldn't it be possible if we give students freedom? Maybe it's possible that teachers can play more of a mentoring or facilitation role rather than just be the teacher with a cane punishing students.
I agree 100%. That is great. You said it beautifully. That's exactly what they should be, a coach on the side. That's what ChatGPT can be, a coach on the side. And that can help them do things that they want to do. And I just remember one of my grandchildren, she thought that Suri was a real person, and it was actually her friend. And she used to ask Suri all these questions all the time. It was hilarious. And we finally had to tell her Suri was not a real person. But, there's a lot of things that kids can learn from technology that can help them. They are inquisitive. There's a lot of videos actually on YouTube for little kids where they learn all sorts of things. I don't know if you've seen it. I think it's called YouTube Learning, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's this one of these grandchildren of mine is using that. That's how I know. She just made a device to teach kids how to fold clothes. And she learned how to make it on YouTube video. And I was like, wow, I don't know how to do that either. And I'm not 8.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, a lot of children learn Spanish from one of the multilingual programs on television, and that's the most natural way to learn, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Watch, Peppa the Pig in Spanish.
With all the information that's available today, and how easy it is to not only manipulate text information but also videos, where do you think the media will go, and what's the role of a journalist with all this, the possibility of manipulating information in this day and age?
Well, I would say that is one of the scariest parts of journalism and scariest parts of the internet, because you can manipulate images and people will think it's true. And so, democracy is based on an informed electorate. And you cannot have a good democracy if people don't understand what's going on. And so I think that's a big threat. And I don't know the solution because I see it happening more and more. And there's a whole group of people in this country that don't seem to understand that you don't believe everything you hear or read on the web. You have to check the sources and you have to make sure that it's real before you believe it. And one of the biggest fake news stories was when Hillary was running for president, and it was the fake news story was that the Pope supports Trump, and they didn't correct it until about 3 or 4 days later, and at that point people thought the correction was the mistake. I don't know so far I don't know the simple solution. I don't know a solution at all. The main thing that I do, I get all my news from trusted news sources. So, for example, Washington Post and the New York Times or the Los Angeles Times, or sources where I know that the journalists have been trained. And if I get something on Facebook or on X now, Twitter, I don't believe it unless I've checked to make sure that it's true. It's hard because a lot of people don't know, and that's one of the reasons why I think journalism education is so important in the high schools, because kids need to know that there are these people out there producing fake news and fake images, and the deep fakes are the scariest things of all.
One of the things I liked about not only you, but everybody in your family is that you had multiple careers. But when students go to school, they're fixated. I have to be an engineer or I have to be a lawyer. What do you tell people when they want to make a career choice and later they want to change that choice?
I tell them that in today's world, the probability of you having the same career for your entire life is very small. I mean, even if you train to be a lawyer, you might switch from being a lawyer to working at a company, or the same thing for a doctor. You might not want to stay the whole time being a doctor, but you might want to do research, or you might want to just work with people. Nobody, the statistics show that very few people start in their 20s with the career that they chose and stick with it. I actually helped conceptualize a school that was started in Amsterdam called the Amsterdam School of Creative Leadership. It's a great school, and it targets people between the ages of 30 and 50 who want to make a career change and change it to a totally new way of earning money, a totally new living. And there's a lot of people that want to do it. And actually, the school has expanded to other countries as well. So you don't have to stick to the career you picked, because also society is changing so quickly that you might need to reskill. There's another company that I work with called Sky Hive. It's based in Canada, now has offices in Palo Alto. And what they do is they help you determine what skills you personally are good at that you might not even know yourself. And then they put together this skill packet that helps you perhaps find other jobs in other areas where you can use the same skills that you already have, or maybe you have those skills and you need just another one to make a totally different career change. You can do that. So you can tell all those young kids out there that they might think they're going for a specific career, but they're probably going to change.
And similarly, we have always had this siloed form of education, either the science track or the arts track or the business track. But reality is not so nicely siloed. I mean, the
Right.
best artists tend to have an element of science and vice versa. And without business, you really can't live in this world. Do you think it makes sense in this day and age to have siloed form of education? And what are the gifts of having an education that's well-rounded?
So I think it's much better to have an education that's well-rounded because you need all those thinking skills. So I would like to make sure that people that major in computer science and math and so forth also study history and philosophy and literature, because we need people that know about the culture, people that think, not just people that know how to code. So I have a former student that wrote a book called The Fuzzy and the Techie. Yeah, The Fuzzy and the Techie. Scott Hartley. I recommend this book, because it shows in the book that the fuzzy, the one that studies everything, actually ends up being better at everything, including techie. But the techie that just concentrates on nothing but tech has a harder time. There's these jokes out there that, computer scientists don't have social emotional, behavior patterns. And anybody majoring in math and science and so forth needs to take that. There's some truth to it, a little bit. We need to help them understand, that the world is not just formulaic. It's not just a computer science program. It involves us. We're all human beings. We need the social emotional skills as well. So yes, the fuzzy and the techie.
I used to be a complete geek when I was in school, and I became human or started recovering when I got into poetry and dance. So I completely concur with you. Are you advocating that people become more like Renaissance people, not just be focused on one thing or the other? And if so,
Yes.
how can the education system and how can families support that among their children and their students?
Well, in high school, elementary school and high school, they don't focus, fortunately, yet. And a lot of schools have stopped giving credit for AP tests because the AP tests, they just focus too much in one area. In college, I think it would be important, and most colleges are requiring students to have what is called a broad education. So you have your major, but you also are taking philosophy or logic, or maybe you don't want to take an English class, old English, but maybe you take contemporary literature or something in the journalism area, or something besides just computer science and programming. And I think most kids would benefit from that, and most parents understand it. And I think one of the most important things for them to study is like what is real versus what is not real on the web. Just what we were talking about earlier, how not to be fooled. And I think
Yeah.
it should be taught in high school because only about, I've forgotten what percentage go to college, but I think it's like about 50%. So what about the other 50%? We need to help them too, so they don't get tricked.
And even among the 50% that go to college, people like me never had a class in journalism or even understanding how journalism works until we got into the corporate world and understood the difference between PR and journalism. Speaking of which, I would love to take that class that you or your school offers. Does Palo Alto High now offer these classes for adults or community education?
Oh my God, what a great idea. We don't, but maybe I should think about that. I didn't even realize that was a good opportunity.
Seriously, especially in this day and age when there's so much information, but not necessarily knowledge, and so much misinformation, whether it is using Clorox to cure COVID, all kinds of things, right? At the presidential level, too. I think it's time we need to help people understand how to sift between what is real and what is unreal.
That's right. You're absolutely right. So maybe I should think about doing that in Palo Alto. Maybe I can make a prototype for other
Yeah,
schools.
yeah. And I think I'm a big believer in adult education. And the way adults are taught is probably much more like what you're saying, as a facilitation process, as a coaching process. Maybe
Right.
we can bring back that kind of lifelong learning programs.
That would be great because, these programs where people collaborate and learn from each other, they're so much more effective if they're coaching. But some of the adult programs, they're still based on the lecture model. And one of the reasons they're based on the lecture model is most of the older folks, that's how they went to school. And when they go to school, they expect to just sit there passively and listen. So you don't learn as much when you are just passive learners. Active learning is what makes the difference. So yes, we should do that. That's a great idea. Thank you so much,
And
Shankar.
if there's any such initiative, I'll be the first one to support it and be a part of it because I love to learn and learn from each other. There's so much technology all around us. Students have way too much technology in their hands, teachers, adults. Is there a role for unplugging from technology? Otherwise, we'll be swamped with data all the time, isn't it?
I think that's true. And there have been recommendations. I don't know how many people take up those recommendations, but recommendations where you just turn off your phone for one day, just one day, and see how you feel. Because, growing up and me going to college and pretty much most of my life, there was no phone. And the biggest change that has happened in my life is the communication. Communication has improved so much that I can find out today, like what's going on in Moscow in about 2 minutes. And that's both good and bad. And, so why do I really need to know? Is there a reason? And so people are obsessed with finding out. But the main thing that people seem to be obsessed with, young people, young parents, they're obsessed with their children, tracking their children. So Life 360, have you heard about Life 360?
Yeah, I've heard about it, but please tell us more. I don't think everybody has heard about it yet.
Life 360 is this program you can put on your phone where you can track not only your children, but you can track your family members. You can find out like who's doing what when they're doing it, where they drive to, how fast they drive, how long it took them to drive. So I mean, that might be reassuring for a parent of a teenager. It's like, oh, he's at the mall. That's okay. But it's kind of invasive, invades your privacy. And also, it's a bit much to be tracked all the time. And I've seen it happening with kids, especially, their parents are like, it's 3:30 and you're supposed to be at home. What are you doing? I see that you're not at home. You're out having ice cream or something. But yeah, it's one of the most popular apps out there.
Looks like
Yeah.
it's a helicopter mom or a drone mom kind of, a drone person.
Helicopter mom on steroids.
Oh my God. That reminds me, we give so much importance even today to learning facts and gathering information. What about the social and emotional part of us? Don't we need to nurture that? And if so, does school have a role in it? Because almost all, at least my education was entirely learning stuff. You know, it is not about how to be a good person.
So there's a controversy about that. That's a good question. Some people think school should just stick with the facts, and other people think school should teach kids how to get along with each other. So I fall into the second category because I think that when kids learn to respect each other, then they grow up to be adults that do the same thing. So in my book, I don't know if you had a chance to read my book, How to Raise Successful People.
Yes.
In my book, I have this acronym that I put in there to help people remember what I said, because sometimes it's hard. And the acronym is TRICK, and it stands for trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. And I say that you should trust your children as much as you can, respect their ideas. Respect means listening to them, you know? You don't have to do it. You can at least listen. Then I, for independence, give them as much independence as possible. You want them to be independent when they grow up. So let them practice when they're little. And collaboration, teach them to collaborate. You can be a model, collaborate. You can collaborate on what you're going to have for dinner or collaborate on who's going to make the dessert. I mean, just build some collaboration in. And then for everybody, kindness, teach kindness, model kindness, because kids copy you. So that's the model that I used in school as a teacher and as I did as a parent. And in school, I can tell you most kids, if you ask them, just ask your kids at home, all of you that are listening, ask them if the school trusts you. I will say that most of them will say no.
I know, that's sad.
It's very sad. And if you ask my students, actually, there's a movie coming out about me and my methods next year.
Wow.
It's interesting. My students said the number one hallmark of my class is that I trusted them.
Oh, can you tell us the name of the movie? Do you have any idea?
It's being made in Mexico by Televisa, which is one of the largest television networks.
Yes.
And it's going to come out first in Spanish. It'll be coming out in February, and then all of Latin America. And then it's going to come out in English in the spring of next year. So I don't think it has a title yet. I know they're working on it because I keep getting little emails from them.
That's wonderful. And what I noticed, Esther, is the trick acronym that you have. Each one of them, trust, respect, I stands for independence,
Yeah,
C is for
collaboration.
collaboration, and K for kindness. Each one of them is a social and emotional skill.
That's right.
None
And
of them is about accumulating facts.
absolutely. And that's what people need to do, that they need to have trick in their life to be the most effective at whatever career or whatever they're doing in the world. And also in their own interpersonal relationships with their partners. It's so important to be able to trust and respect the people that you interact with. And you don't learn that by watching, just like you don't learn to swim like an Olympic swimmer by watching the Olympics, right? You have to do it. And kids have to practice it. Parents have to practice it. It'll make your kids really happy when they grow up, when they're teenagers. Parents that use trick with their little kids, their teenagers love them and talk to them. They don't have a situation where the teenager goes into the room, comes home from school, has a snack, goes into the room, closes the door, done.
It's
That
very true. It's very true because all these things have to be practiced. There's no other way really, because it's the neuronal connections have to be formed,
yes, you have
and
to
you
learn how
can't
to
do that
do it.
without it's not a one trick pony.
That's right. You cannot do it without trying it. You can't ride a bike by not, if you don't learn how by doing it, you can't ride a bike. There's all the social interaction skills. They happen when you're young, and it's very important for kids to learn those. They learn them from their parents. So don't ignore your children at home. You use trick.
Well, Esther, I could talk to you all day long, and it's so amazing. And we are all in the same neighborhood, but at the same time, we're also busy. It's good to take time off to really feel into what's valuable and introspect. So, to everyone out there, I'm always looking for different views. I'm not just talking to geeks like me, I'm talking to people who can help us understand how all this technology can be used in a way that's useful, in a tricky way, which is to use it with trust, with respect, and not just throw technology at each other. And so please come forward. I want to learn from you. I want to hear the different stories you have around the way things are changing and the way technology is changing. Esther, it's again a joy to talk to you. This is my second time talking to you. Last time was during the pandemic, And I'm not sure what is more chaotic today or during the pandemic.
I don't know either. Well, with all this climate stuff we have to deal with, it feels a little bit more chaotic.
Yes, yes. Thanks again, and please stay in touch.
Thank you so much for this interview. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank
Thank
you.
you.